Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, I took a run this morning. So I'm so glad that you brought up exercise after this new year. I took a run this morning, which is something I normally do, but I hadn't done it in about a week and a half. Because for those of you who follow me on Facebook, you'll know I had a case of strep throat last week. And it was awfully tiring to lay in bed. So when I took that run this morning, I had a lot of energy. But as I laid in bed, I got to thinking about why I do this exercise. And I started running in the mornings about 6 years ago, maybe. But I did it just so I would maybe feel better. I've heard there's some health benefits. We all know we're supposed to exercise. But I thought I would take a look into why exercise actually makes a difference. And I found a few interesting things. I'm going to talk about 3 of them because there's a lot of benefits, and I got to limit it. I'm going to talk about mortality rates, talk about hypertension, I'm going to talk about diabetes. Now, mortality rates basically means how long you live. There was a study done in the 60s by a guy named Poffenberger, a university professor out of the University of Stanford. He tracked over about 12 years Harvard graduates, and what he discovered, in short, is that there is a direct correlation between the amount of calories burned and life expectancy. About 500 calories a week that are burned. He noticed that people started living longer, and that kept going up until about 3,500 calories per week. Exercise a little, live a little longer. Exercise more, live even longer. In and of itself, it's one study. He even cautioned against saying that these are more affluent people. But there was another study done by the Institute for Aerobic Research, and that in Dallas, and they tracked 13,000 people over 8 years. And what they discovered is very similar, but what they did is they categorized them into 5 groups. Where do these people lie? No exercise, lie. They discovered that on the low end, when you move up one group, so say 500,000 calories, they discovered a 60% mortality drop, or your increase in life expectancy went up about 60%, just by that minimal amount of exercise. It's pretty dramatic. When you think about burning 500 calories, you're talking about simply walking to the store a couple times a week. That's it. It's really not much. So life expectancy when you exercise goes up dramatically. Now, the second thing I want to mention is hypertension. Now, most of you know that hypertension is high blood pressure. Basically, high blood pressure that's defined, that's sustained over a long time is hypertension. And hypertension can lead to a lot of bad things like stroke and cardiac disease and cardiac arrest. Well, according to the University of California, Berkeley's Wellness Encyclopedia, they talk about how exercise directly impacts hypertension. The way it works is this. When you get your blood pressure measured, you get those 2 numbers. Those are the systolic and the diastolic pressures. The systolic pressure is when the heart beats. That's when the pressure is put on your artery. The diastolic is when it's at rest. So the systolic pressure is what puts all the pressure on those arteries. Well, as you exercise, your heart gets stronger. It can push more blood out with each push. If you're pushing more blood out, you have to push less. So if you're pushing less each time, you're doing it less, your systolic pressure just drops. It's a direct relationship. Hypertension drops. Risk of stroke, risk of cardiac disease and arrest drops. Simple benefits. The third thing I mentioned is diabetes. Now, for those of you who listen to NPR, anybody listen to NPR? Okay, you might have heard a report the other day about these pair of brothers, they're twins, the Daily brothers, not the Daily brothers from Chicago, but the Daily brother, pair of Joe Blows over in the East Coast. And these guys are about 60-ish. And in 1996, one of the Daly brothers developed diabetes, type 2. His identical twin was tested immediately, and he was pre-diabetic. What he did is he went to his doctor. His doctor said, okay, you got to lose 14 pounds, too hard. And then he had to come up with 150 minutes of exercise each week. 150 isn't that bad. 30 minutes 5 times, not too bad. What happened in short is that he, instead of developing stroke, instead of developing diabetes, he prevented diabetes. He lost the 14 pounds. To this day, 13 years later, he has diabetes, and his blood sugars levels have dropped below pre-diabetes levels. So those are just a few quick little benefits to some exercise. You know, when I was younger, I didn't worry too much about it. You know, when I was in really good health, like Brian, I didn't worry about it. But as I get older, I want to know why that exercise and that running is valuable. And I'm not going to preach to anybody here. I'm just going to say that exercise for me has been very valuable. And I thank you very much for your time